The 6 a.m. police sirens shattered suburban silence, while the metallic taste of pure rage mixed with spilled coffee as I watched two patrol cars surround our house, like we were running a meth lab instead of just trying to live peacefully in Ohio. My wife Valentina opens the door in Army PT gear, shoulders squared with that unmistakable military bearing that screams, "I've survived actual combat zones." Meanwhile, Karen Pemberton, our HOA president and part-time suburban dictator, stands on the sidewalk pointing like she's directing a terrorism raid, her shrill voice shrieking about neighborhood safety, while her spotless BMW sits perfectly parked because rules apparently only apply to other people. But here's the moment that ignited this war. When Karen spotted those sergeant stripes tattooed on Valentina's shoulder, her face went ghost white, and she actually said, "People like that don't belong in neighborhoods like this." Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if some entitled Karen called cops on your family because she couldn't handle living next to a decorated veteran? And drop your location. I need to know if HOA psychopaths are terrorizing heroes everywhere. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. My name's Marcus, and I'm a third-generation supervisor who inherited more than just calloused hands from my family. I got my grandmother's house in Willowbrook Estates, built back in 1987 when neighborhoods actually felt like communities instead of corporate subdivisions. The house needed work. We're talking peeling paint that looked like a bad sunburn, a front garden that resembled a botanical experiment gone wrong, and driveway cracks you could lose a small child in. But it was ours, and after bouncing between rentals for years, ours felt pretty damn good. Valentina had just finished 8 years in the Army, a logistics specialist, which is fancy military talk for the person who makes sure everyone gets what they need when they need it. Think of her as a human Tetris master who could organize a supply chain in her sleep. She was job hunting while helping me renovate, armed with power tools and enough organizational skills to make Marie Kondo weep with joy. 6 months married, still in that phase where we'd rather tackle home improvement projects together than watch Netflix separately. The smell of sawdust from my workshop, mixed with her chamomile tea, created this weird domestic perfume that somehow worked. Now, Willowbrook Estates has 147 homes scattered across what used to be farmland outside Columbus. Middle-class suburban dream, or nightmare depending on your perspective. The HOA got established in 2019 when some luxury development connected to our older section, and suddenly we had monthly dues of $85 and a rulebook thicker than a Stephen King novel. Enter Karen Pemberton. Picture this, 48 years old, real estate agent, drives a BMW that costs more than most people's annual salary, lives in the $400,000 corner lot house with landscaping so perfect it looks like a golf course fairway. She'd been HOA president for 3 years, treating the position like she was running a small dictatorship instead of managing a suburban neighborhood. Our first week was peaceful. Dorothy, the 73-year-old retired teacher next door, brought us a welcome basket filled with homemade cookies and local intel. The woman had taught 3rd grade for 40 years and possessed that supernatural ability to spot trouble before it spotted you. Week 2 brought our first violation notice. Apparently, fixing my own front steps qualified as unapproved exterior modifications. I'd been a construction worker for 15 years, but according to Karen's interpretation of the HOA covenant, I needed written permission to hammer 3 loose boards back into place. Week 3, Karen paid us a courtesy visit. She stood in our doorway wearing a smile that never reached her eyes, making comments about maintaining neighborhood standards, while her gaze cataloged every imperfection like she was conducting a military inspection. The way she pronounced standards made it sound like a 4-letter word. But week 4? That's when things got interesting. Valentina parked her reliable Honda Civic in our driveway instead of squeezing it into the garage with my tools. Practical decision, right? Wrong. According to Karen's twisted interpretation of reality, this somehow violated the aesthetic vehicle placement guidelines. I should mention something about my wife. 8 years dealing with difficult superior officers had given her a finely tuned radar for people who confused authority with power. While I was the type to pay a bogus fine just to avoid confrontation, Valentina was already 3 steps ahead, analyzing Karen's behavior patterns like she was planning a supply convoy through hostile territory. Dorothy noticed it too. During one of our evening tea sessions on her porch, she mentioned Karen had tried this same routine with the Henderson family last year. They'd moved away rather than fight. That woman, Dorothy said, stirring honey into her chamomile tea with more force than necessary, thinks she owns this neighborhood instead of just living in it. The sound of Karen's heels clicking on concrete had become our unofficial neighborhood warning system. When you heard that sharp staccato rhythm approaching, you knew someone was about to have their day ruined by a violation notice and a lecture about property values. Little did we know, Karen wasn't just a control freak with too much time on her hands. She had secrets that made our parking dispute look like a Sunday school picnic. Karen's opening gambit arrived with the precision of a German train schedule and about as much warmth as a morgue freezer. The violation notice was taped to our front door at exactly 7 a.m. I know, because the adhesive was still tacky when I found it, leaving residue that smelled like industrial glue mixed with spite. Violation: overnight street parking of commercial appearing vehicles in violation of Willowbrook Estates Covenant, Section 4.2b. The paper reeked of Karen's signature perfume, something that cost more per ounce than premium gasoline and smelled like flowers dying in a funeral home. Our Honda Civic, a reliable 8-year-old sedan whose most commercial cargo was Dorothy's weekly groceries, had apparently become a threat to the American dream itself. $50 fine escalating to $150 after 10 days. The sound of my checkbook tearing as I wrote that payment still makes my teeth ache. "Hold up," Valentina said, reading over my shoulder while morning coffee steam fogged her reading glasses. "My car that gets 34 miles per gallon is too commercial for our own driveway?" Her voice carried that dangerous calm I'd learned to recognize, the same tone she'd used when some desk jockey tried to deny her unit's equipment requisitions in Kandahar. Being the conflict-avoidant guy I am, I paid the first fine faster than a speeding ticket. $50 seemed cheaper than trench warfare with a suburban psychopath. I crammed Valentina's car into our garage next to my table saw, creating an automotive puzzle that required a physics degree to solve. Biggest mistake of my life. While I was playing peacekeeper, my wife went full military intelligence. Saturday morning, she deployed to the county courthouse armed with a spiral notebook and the kind of laser focus that had once tracked supply convoys through 3 hostile provinces. The musty scent of old documents and bureaucratic inefficiency couldn't mask her growing satisfaction as she photographed pages with tactical precision. "Found something fascinating," she announced, spreading photocopies across our kitchen table like classified battle plans. The crackling sound of fresh copies filled our kitchen as she arranged evidence. Section 4.2b restricts vehicles exceeding 6,000 pounds from overnight street parking. Our Honda weighs exactly 2,847 pounds. Her smile could have melted steel. But here's the beautiful part. I also found the original 1987 covenant. This parking restriction, it was added in 2019 without proper homeowner approval. Legally, it's unenforceable. The neighborhood barbecue provided perfect cover for tactical retaliation. Dorothy's annual Labor Day tradition brought 40-plus neighbors together under late summer humidity where the smell of charcoal mixed with forced conversation about property taxes. That's when Valentina executed Operation Karma with surgical precision. While Karen held court by the potato salad, lecturing trapped neighbors about maintaining standards, her pristine BMW sat parked directly in the fire lane. That bright red curb marked "No Parking Fire Lane" in letters visible from low orbit. Valentina approached with smartphone ready, casual as a tourist. The satisfying click of GPS-stamped evidence was barely audible over Karen's property value sermon. 23 minutes later, she'd filed complaints with 3 separate agencies: Columbus Fire Marshal, City Parking Enforcement, and the County Environmental Office after discovering Karen's crew dumping grass clippings in the storm drain. The citations arrived like Christmas morning in reverse. Fire Marshal, $250 0 cents plus license suspension warning. Parking, $150 0 cents for blocking emergency access. Environmental, $500 0 cents for watershed contamination. But here's where it got really interesting. Karen's retaliation came swift and vicious. She called the police claiming I'd threatened her during the barbecue. Completely fabricated, but she played the victim card with Oscar-worthy performance. The officers showed up during dinner, body cameras rolling. "Ma'am," one said to Valentina, We need to ask about alleged threats made by your husband." That's when Karen made her fatal error. She appeared on our lawn like a suburban avenging angel, pointing dramatically at Valentina. "That woman doesn't belong in this neighborhood. People like her think they can park wherever they want, bring down our property values with their military attitude." The officers exchanged glances. One cleared his throat. "Ma'am, are you saying you filed this complaint because she's a veteran?" Karen's face went through several shades of red before landing on purple. "I didn't say that. I meant..." "We're done here," the senior officer announced. "Mrs. Pemberton, filing false reports is a criminal offense. Consider this your only warning." As Karen retreated, sputtering excuses, Valentina smiled that particular smile that meant checkmate. "Beautiful thing about bullies," she observed, watching Karen's tactical retreat, "is they always reveal their true colors under pressure. Military Strategy 101. Let arrogant enemies defeat themselves." She was cataloging everything in her tactical notebook, times, dates, witnesses. Watching her operate like a one-woman intelligence unit was both impressive and terrifying. What we hadn't grasped yet was that parking violations were merely Karen's opening probe. She was testing our defenses, and we'd just passed her first test with flying colors. The real war was about to begin. Karen's next offense arrived with the precision of a Swiss watch and the subtlety of a freight train collision. If parking violations couldn't break us, she'd orchestrate a noise complaint symphony that would make a construction site seem peaceful by comparison. The campaign launched Wednesday morning when I began building Dorothy's wheelchair ramp. The sweet smell of fresh-cut lumber mixed with morning dew should have been therapeutic, but Karen had weaponized even carpentry against us. Poor Dorothy had taken a nasty tumble collecting mail, transforming her front steps into an insurmountable obstacle course. City permits, approved. Construction hours, legal. Karen's patience, non-existent. The first violation notice materialized before I'd even fired up my circular saw, literally. Filed at 8:03 a.m. for excessive construction noise, exactly 3 minutes after legal work hours began. The sound of my truck door closing had apparently shattered the delicate morning tranquility of suburban paradise. But Karen wasn't operating solo anymore. Enter the Ashfords, California transplants who'd purchased the neighborhood McMansion and were desperately seeking Karen's approval, like kids wanting to sit at the popular lunch table. Think eager puppies, but with HOA voting rights and delusions of superiority. "We're simply concerned about maintaining standards," Jennifer Ashford announced to anyone within earshot, her voice carrying that particular nasal quality of someone who'd never operated anything more complex than a coffee machine. "All this, industrial activity, really isn't appropriate for a residential community of this caliber." The complaints multiplied like bacteria in a petri dish. 7 separate noise violations in 48 hours, each filed by different neighbors, each claiming my commercial construction operations violated their sacred right to suburban silence. The metallic taste of stress was becoming my constant companion, mixing unpleasantly with the familiar scent of sawdust. Here's what Karen's little conspiracy didn't anticipate: my wife's systematic approach to problem solving. While I was drowning in violation notices, Valentina had deployed to Amazon and acquired a professional-grade decibel meter. Every hammer strike, saw cut, and drill operation was now being measured with laboratory precision, creating a scientific fortress against Karen's subjective complaints. "Interesting findings," she announced over dinner, spreading data charts across our kitchen table like a meteorologist tracking hurricanes. The crisp sound of fresh printouts being arranged filled the room. "Your peak construction noise, 68 decibels during legal hours. Karen's landscaping crew, 94 decibels at 7 a.m. every Tuesday." The irony tasted sweeter than Dorothy's legendary peach cobbler. City ordinance, maximum 75 decibels during daytime, 55 before 8 a.m. Karen's dawn patrol was obliterating actual laws while complaining about my legal activities. Valentina's counterstrike was poetry in motion. Tuesday morning at 6:43 a.m., Karen's mechanized army descended like the apocalypse with leaf blowers, riding mowers, and hedge trimmers that sounded like angry pterodactyls. Valentina positioned herself strategically with scientific equipment, capturing evidence with the patience of a sniper waiting for the perfect shot. The readings were magnificent, 96 decibels of pure, beautiful, illegal noise pollution. By 8:15 a.m. she'd filed comprehensive complaints with city noise control, complete with GPS-stamped measurements, high-definition video evidence, and a detailed analysis of how the violations affected elderly residents like Dorothy. Her documentation would have made forensic investigators applaud. Karen's landscaping company received their citation within 24 hours, $750, 0 cents fine plus license suspension. Warning for repeat violations. Suddenly, her obsessive lawn perfectionism required actual legal compliance. Scheduling. I had scheduled, but Karen's desperation was just beginning. Her nuclear option came disguised as patriotic concern. Anonymous tip to the IRS claiming I was operating an unreported cash business, plus a simultaneous complaint to the state contractor licensing board questioning my credentials. The paperwork tsunami that followed could have supplied a medium-sized law firm for months. Classic harassment escalation, Valentina observed, analyzing the documentation with military-trained detachment. When frontal assault fails, attack the flanks. She's hoping bureaucratic pressure will accomplish what direct confrontation couldn't. The investigations were bureaucratic torture, involving receipts dating back to the Clinton administration, but my grandfather's obsessive record-keeping habits proved invaluable. Every legitimate transaction was documented with almost neurotic precision. Both agencies cleared me completely. The IRS closing letter included pointed warnings about false reporting penalties, while the licensing board noted patterns of harassment in their file closure. Meanwhile, Valentina's scientific approach was demolishing Karen's noise complaint network. 3 neighbors quietly approached us, confessing they'd been intimidated into filing false reports and offering to retract their statements. The musty smell of fear was finally dissipating from our street. Beautiful thing about fear-based systems, Valentina explained while testing Dorothy's new ramp stability, is they collapse the moment someone refuses to be afraid. Remove the intimidation factor, and bullies become just sad people with clipboards. Karen's carefully constructed harassment network was crumbling faster than a cookie in a toddler's hands, and she was about to discover that desperate people make stupid mistakes. The real fireworks were just beginning. Karen's digital blitzkrieg launched with the subtlety of a nuclear bomb and twice the fallout. If official channels couldn't destroy us, she'd weaponize social media to transform our peaceful neighborhood into a virtual thunderdome of screenshots and suburban paranoia. The private Facebook group materialized overnight like a digital cancer, Willowbrook Neighborhood Watch, protecting our investment. The metallic taste of dread filled my mouth as I watched 23 initial members multiply faster than rabbits on Red Bull. Karen's opening salvo was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive psychological warfare. Concerning activities at our address, threaten community safety. Unregistered vehicles, suspicious construction, possible commercial operations. Anyone else noticing demographic changes affecting our property values? Document everything. Safety first, community standards. The post included surveillance-quality photos of our property, with helpful red arrows highlighting violations. Our Honda, my toolbox, even Dorothy's wheelchair ramp somehow qualified as suspicious infrastructure. The acrid smell of digital witch hunting practically emanated from my computer screen. But Karen's amateur hour was about to meet professional-grade intelligence gathering. While she was busy playing neighborhood detective, Valentina launched Operation Digital Counter-Strike with military precision. Creating Susan Thompson, complete with stolen stock photo and fabricated backstory, took exactly 4 minutes. Within hours, she'd infiltrated Karen's echo chamber and was documenting every defamatory post with forensic accuracy. Rule 1 of psychological operations, Valentina explained, compiling evidence with methodical efficiency: know your enemy's weaknesses. Rule 2, let them expose those weaknesses publicly while you document everything. The smell of victory was already wafting through our kitchen. Karen's posts escalated faster than a dumpster fire in drought season. My neighborhood handyman work became unlicensed commercial operations. Valentina's job hunting became suspicious unemployment patterns. Our grocery deliveries triggered posts about unidentified vehicles and unknown personnel conducting surveillance. Then Karen made her fatal mistake. She posted a photo of Valentina in full military dress uniform, dress blues, combat ribbons, the works, with commentary about people who bring military aggression to civilian communities and failed soldiers who can't adapt to normal society. The coffee shop went dead silent when Valentina showed me that post. Even the espresso machines seemed to wheeze in shock. "This photograph," Valentina said, her voice carrying the dangerous calm of approaching thunder, "is from my personnel file, military records. Someone with security clearance accessed classified information illegally. This isn't cyberbullying anymore, it's federal identity theft and privacy violation." Her smile could have powered a small city. Karen just graduated from misdemeanor harassment to felony territory. Time to call in some favors. Valentina's counterstrike was surgical in its precision. Within 24 hours, she'd filed complaints with the Ohio Attorney General's Cybercrime Division, the FBI's Internet Crime Unit, and the military's Criminal Investigation Command. Her documentation package included timestamps, IP tracking data, and a digital forensics analysis that would have impressed CSI investigators. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. Karen had organized a community safety meeting at Grind Coffee, expecting to rally an army of concerned neighbors against the veteran menace threatening their property values. 32 people showed up, including several Karen hadn't invited. "Before we start," announced Maria, the coffee shop owner, "I want everyone to know that discriminatory speech isn't welcome in my establishment. Period." The tension was thick enough to cut with a butter knife. Karen launched into her prepared presentation about concerning elements and neighborhood security, but her audience wasn't buying the performance. 3 neighbors had already received visits from federal investigators about the stolen military photograph. Word travels fast in suburbia, especially when it involves potential felonies. "Mrs. Pemberton," interrupted Dorothy, speaking with the authority of someone who'd taught unruly children for 4 decades, "are you aware that posting stolen military photographs violates federal privacy laws?" Karen's face cycled through the entire visible spectrum before settling on an alarming shade of purple. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to protect our community from people who think military service gives them special privileges." That's when Jerome, our postal worker ally, dropped the nuclear bomb. "Actually," he said, pulling out an official envelope, "I'm required to inform you that this is a federal criminal investigation notice. FBI Cybercrime Division wants to discuss your social media activities." The sound of Karen's world collapsing was audible, a sort of strangled wheeze that suggested her warranty had just expired. The meeting dissolved faster than cotton candy in a hurricane, but not before Valentina had recorded every discriminatory word with courtroom-quality audio. "Beautiful thing about social media warfare," she observed later, reviewing our digital evidence archive, "is that amateur operators always leave fingerprints. Karen just created enough federal evidence to end her harassment career permanently." The irony was poetry. Karen's digital campaign to destroy us had documented her own criminal behavior with FBI-quality precision. The nuclear option arrived, disguised as boring paperwork, but it detonated like a financial bomb in our kitchen. While Karen was busy hiring lawyers to defend against federal cybercrime charges, Valentina had quietly deployed Operation Follow the Money, and what she discovered made Watergate look like a parking ticket. "Ohio Revised Code Section 5312 F5, Valentina announced over morning coffee, dropping a manila folder thick enough to stop bullets. The crisp sound of official documents hitting our table mixed with the satisfying aroma of brewing justice. HOA financial records must be available for member inspection. Karen's stonewalling was illegal from day one. The smell of fresh photocopies and financial fraud filled our kitchen as she spread evidence like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Her military logistics training had taught her to follow money trails with bloodhound precision, and Karen's bookkeeping reeked of corruption from 3 zip codes away. "Feast your eyes on this beautiful disaster," she said, highlighting line items with the satisfaction of someone solving a murder mystery. $47,000 to Premium Grounds LLC for ongoing landscaping enhancement. Want to guess who owns Premium Grounds? The invoices looked faker than a $3 bill. Please don't tell me it's Karen's family. Her ex-husband's business partner. No competitive bidding, no work specifications, no completion photos. Just monthly payments of $3,500 for services that exist only on paper. Valentina's smile could have powered half of Columbus. The company address? A UPS store mailbox. The financial forensics painted a picture uglier than Karen's soul. Bank statements revealed a systematic embezzlement scheme involving fake vendors, inflated contracts, and creative accounting that would make Al Capone applaud. The metallic taste of righteous anger filled my mouth as I absorbed the scope of her theft. But wait, there's more, Valentina continued with the enthusiasm of a late-night infomercial host. $12,000 for emergency drainage repair, charged to the HOA for work on Karen's private property. She literally billed the neighborhood for fixing her own backyard flooding problem. The paper trail read like a criminal masterclass. Pool maintenance contracts for a community that had no pool, snow removal services during summer months, security system monitoring for equipment that didn't exist. Karen had been treating the HOA treasury like her personal ATM for 3 years running. The light bulb moment, Valentina said, organizing evidence with surgical precision, was realizing her harassment wasn't random bullying, it was strategic defense. She spotted me as a threat the second she saw those logistics stripes. Military supply officers are specifically trained to identify financial fraud and procurement violations. The sound of puzzle pieces clicking into place was audible. Karen's campaign to drive us away suddenly made perfect sense. We weren't just stubborn neighbors. We were existential threats to her criminal enterprise. Every violation notice, every noise complaint, every social media attack had been calculated to eliminate the one person in Willowbrook Estates with the expertise to expose her scheme. "Holy shit," I whispered, scanning invoices for landscaping equipment that cost more than luxury cars. "She's been robbing everyone blind." "Gets better. Remember the Henderson family who moved away last year? I found their complaint letters in the files. They'd started asking questions about the budget before Karen's harassment campaign drove them out." Valentina's voice carried the dangerous satisfaction of a hunter tracking wounded prey. Pattern recognition, Marcus. She eliminates threats before they can expose her operation. The basement air conditioning hummed ominously as we absorbed the implications. Our parking war had been cover for something much bigger, a neighborhood crime boss protecting her territory through systematic intimidation. In game, I asked, studying evidence that could probably fund a small prison sentence. Valentina's smile suggested she'd already planned our victory parade. "We're going to give Karen exactly what she's been trying to prevent: complete financial transparency at a public meeting where every neighbor sees how their HOA fees funded her lifestyle." The storm was coming, and Karen had just realized she'd picked a fight with the wrong veteran. Dorothy's kitchen transformed into something resembling a cross between a military command center and a quilting bee conspiracy, complete with wall maps, evidence charts, and enough coffee to fuel a small revolution. The aroma of Dorothy's legendary cinnamon rolls mixed with the metallic scent of justice as our unlikely coalition gathered for what military strategists call operational planning and normal people call plotting sweet revenge. "Welcome to Operation Neighborhood Liberation," Valentina announced, spreading documents across Dorothy's antique oak table with the precision of a general briefing Joint Chiefs of Staff. The satisfying rustle of organized paperwork filled the room like tactical music. "Mission objective: complete dismantlement of a criminal HOA regime. Timeline: 14 days. Acceptable collateral damage: Karen's feelings." Our war council looked like the cast of Ocean's 11 if they'd all been recruited from suburban Ohio. Dorothy presided from her usual chair, armed with decades of classroom management experience and a spiral notebook containing 3 years of Karen surveillance that would make the FBI jealous. Jerome occupied the corner position, his postal uniform lending federal authority while he sorted through evidence of mail tampering, with the enthusiasm of someone who'd finally found a worthy opponent. "Intelligence briefing," Dorothy reported, adjusting her bifocals with the authority of someone who'd maintained order among third graders during sugar rushes. Karen's psychological profile indicates escalating panic. She's conducting individual neighbor interviews, attempting to assess loyalty levels and identify potential defectors. Current allegiance count: 12 confirmed hostiles, 8 neutrals, 27 friendlies. The taste of impending victory was sweeter than Dorothy's secret recipe frosting. Valentina had assembled a legal artillery unit that would make Supreme Court justices applaud. Veterans Affairs connected her with discrimination specialists who worked pro bono for service members. Ohio Legal Aid assigned their most feared HOA fraud prosecutor, a woman whose conviction rate against corrupt community associations approached mathematical perfection. The state attorney general's office had opened a formal investigation after discovering Karen's embezzlement pattern matched a statewide organized crime network. Multi-sector assault protocol, Valentina explained, pointing to her tactical flowchart with laser precision. The squeaking sound of her marker against the whiteboard punctuated each strategic point. Vector Alpha, civil defamation lawsuit targeting personal assets. Vector Bravo, criminal embezzlement prosecution seeking prison time. Vector Charlie, professional license revocation ending real estate career. Vector Delta, HOA restructuring with financial restitution. Our evidence archive had achieved biblical proportions, financial records documenting systematic theft, social media screenshots preserving discriminatory harassment, witness testimonies from multiple harassment victims, and professional misconduct documentation thick enough to build a small fortress. Jerome's federal mail crime portfolio included surveillance photos, delivery tracking records, and postal inspector statements that could add decades to any sentence. The beautiful irony, Valentina observed while organizing witness statements in alphabetical order, is that methodical criminals like Karen document their own prosecutions. Every harassment incident, financial irregularity, and discriminatory comment exists in triplicate, with timestamp verification. Community mobilization was proceeding like a perfectly choreographed military operation. Marcus's construction network provided character witnesses and neighborhood credibility from people who actually worked for their money. Valentina's veteran community offered both emotional support and technical expertise. Apparently, military logistics networks include specialists in forensic accounting and psychological warfare. Dorothy's transformation into neighborhood spy master had been revelation. Her innocent elderly lady cover allowed intelligence gathering with CIA-level efficiency, while her teaching authority commanded respect from residents who still remembered being intimidated by fourth-grade teachers. The woman had been conducting covert operations since before most people knew the terminology. Synchronization timing is mission-critical, Valentina continued, highlighting coordination dates on a calendar that resembled D-Day planning documents. Legal filings must occur simultaneously to prevent evidence destruction. Media exposure coordinates with criminal arrests for maximum public impact. Community revelation follows initial charges for optimal dramatic resolution. The technical preparation phase resembled something from a legal thriller crossed with a heist movie. Evidence preservation protocols guaranteed courtroom admissibility. Witness protection procedures secured testimony integrity, and media coordination ensured positive coverage of our David versus Goliath narrative, with better documentation than most documentaries. Jerome's federal mail violation evidence added delicious complexity to our legal symphony. Mail tampering carries 5-year federal minimums, he explained with the satisfaction of someone who'd watched criminals underestimate postal law enforcement for 30 years. Karen's been intercepting correspondence and filing fraudulent delivery complaints. Postal inspectors consider that personal insult to federal authority. The emotional moment came when Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed Valentina's hand. "You know, dear," she said, her voice carrying warmth that had comforted thousands of students, "I've been fighting Karen alone for 3 years. Having real allies feels like Christmas morning." The room went quiet, except for the gentle hum of Dorothy's refrigerator and the distant sound of suburban traffic. Jerome cleared his throat, and Marcus shifted uncomfortably. But the moment of genuine connection was unmistakable. "Ma'am," Valentina replied, her military bearings softening slightly, "we don't leave anyone behind. That's not just Army policy, it's the right thing to do. Cornered animals are dangerous, but cornered suburban sociopaths are absolutely terrifying." The acrid smell of desperation mixed with expensive perfume hung in the morning air, as Karen Pemberton prepared to demonstrate exactly how vicious a neighborhood tyrant could become when her criminal empire faced extinction. The sabotage campaign launched with the subtlety of a hurricane at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. Marcus discovered his work truck bleeding brake fluid onto the asphalt like a wounded animal, tires slashed with surgical precision designed to cause highway death rather than mere inconvenience. The metallic taste of pure terror filled his mouth as he realized Karen had graduated from harassment to attempted murder. "Professional job," Officer Rodriguez noted, photographing evidence with crime scene precision. The sharp chemical smell of brake fluid mixed with morning dew created an olfactory crime scene. Whoever did this understands automotive systems. "You got enemies in organized crime?" If only he knew. But vehicular homicide was merely Karen's appetizer. Within 48 hours, Child Protective Services received an anonymous report about severe child neglect and unsafe living conditions, requiring immediate investigation. The social worker who arrived looked genuinely bewildered when confronted with our aggressively child-free household. "This is unprecedented," she admitted, scanning our decidedly adult-oriented space with growing confusion. The complaint described crying children, dangerous conditions, possible abuse. "Are you operating an unlicensed daycare?" "Ma'am," Valentina replied with supernatural patience, "the most dangerous thing here is my husband's power tool obsession and his tendency to leave coffee cups in architecturally impossible locations." The fake CPS report was dismissed faster than Karen's credibility, but not before creating permanent government files that would haunt background checks forever. Psychological warfare designed for maximum long-term damage. Karen's digital assault escalated with criminal sophistication. Fake Google reviews materialized overnight, describing imaginary construction disasters with Hollywood-level detail. Marcus's allegedly shoddy workmanship had apparently caused flooding, structural collapse, and one particularly creative review claimed he'd accidentally demolished the wrong house entirely. "Look at this masterpiece," Marcus said, reading fabricated horror stories with morbid fascination. "According to the internet, I'm simultaneously the most incompetent contractor in Ohio and somehow capable of complex architectural destruction requiring advanced engineering." But Karen's most dangerous gambit involved federal crimes with military implications. She'd somehow acquired Valentina's classified service records and was contacting former commanding officers with allegations of post-discharge instability and civilian adjustment disorders. The phone call arrived during dinner, naturally. "Marcus Thompson?" The voice carried enough military authority to straighten spines from 3 states away. "Colonel Harrison, Fort Campbell. Need to discuss some concerning allegations about your wife's post-service conduct." 20 minutes later, the colonel had pivoted from investigating Valentina to hunting whoever had committed federal crimes, accessing military personnel files. Apparently, military folks take illegal record access personally, especially when it targets decorated logistics sergeants. "Sergeant Thompson's record is exemplary," Colonel Harrison announced with the finality of someone ending careers. "Whoever's making these allegations has violated federal laws. We're coordinating with FBI counterintelligence to identify the perpetrator." Karen's physical sabotage campaign expanded like cancer through our neighborhood. Accidental sprinkler malfunctions flooded Marcus's workshop, transforming precision tools into expensive scrap metal. Dorothy's wheelchair ramp suffered mysterious vandalism that could have killed an elderly woman. Even our flower beds became casualties in Karen's scorched earth strategy. The mailbox assassination was particularly artistic. A drunk driver had somehow managed to demolish only our federal mail receptacle while leaving neighboring properties mysteriously untouched. Jerome documented the destruction with postal inspector precision, his enthusiasm for federal mail crimes reaching near religious levels. "Beautiful pattern recognition," he explained, photographing debris like a forensic artist. 17 similar incidents across 4 counties, all targeting HOA complainants. Karen's operating a regional harassment network. Valentina's counter-strike was surgical in its precision and devastating in its scope. Every incident was documented with scientific accuracy. Security cameras captured license plates of suspicious vehicles, and digital forensics traced fake reviews to IP addresses that would make Karen's legal problems multiply like compound interest. But the masterstroke came when Valentina's military network activated like a precision weapons system. "Interesting development," she announced over morning coffee, waving an official envelope with military bearing. "Remember Colonel Harrison? Turns out the Army takes illegal access to personnel files very seriously. Karen's about to receive a visit from Military Criminal Investigation Command." The sound of federal agencies coordinating was like distant thunder, promising the kind of storm that changes landscapes permanently. Karen made one critical error, Valentina observed, organizing evidence with tactical precision. She declared war on the entire military community. Veterans protect their own, and now she's facing the combined wrath of Army CID, FBI counterintelligence, and federal prosecutors who specialize in security violations. The taste of approaching justice mixed with the satisfaction of watching a bully finally face consequences that matched her crimes. Karen's desperation was about to provide the smoking gun evidence needed to end her reign of suburban terror forever. Karen's apocalyptic finale was orchestrated with the desperation of a cornered dictator and the strategic brilliance of someone who'd clearly snorted too much HOA bylaws powder. The emergency meeting announcement arrived like a declaration of war, complete with certified mail, hand-delivered flyers reeking of Karen's signature desperation perfume, and social media blasts that screamed panic, louder than a car alarm symphony. "Urgent community safety meeting," the flyer proclaimed in Comic Sans font, because apparently Karen's graphic design skills had graduated from the same institution as her moral compass. The paper felt slightly damp with what could only be described as the cold sweat of impending doom. "She's pulling out all the stops," Dorothy observed, examining the announcement through her reading glasses with the analytical precision of someone who'd survived 4 decades of parent-teacher conferences. The musty smell of desperation mixed with fresh printer ink created an olfactory crime scene. Notice the language escalation. Urgent, safety, threats. Woman's gone full Chicken Little, except the sky really is falling on her. Karen's preparation resembled a military operation planned by someone who'd only watched war movies while heavily medicated. She'd reserved the community center's main hall, arranged for professional lighting that would make a Broadway production jealous, and somehow convinced Channel 6 News to cover what she'd pitched as grassroots community activism against neighborhood infiltration. The venue transformation was architectural theater at its finest. Karen had positioned herself at a head table with microphone, projection screen, and enough visual aids to shame a Pentagon briefing. Folding chairs were arranged in courthouse-style rows, complete with a designated evidence presentation area that suggested she'd been watching too many legal dramas. What Princess Karen didn't realize was that Valentina had been conducting counterintelligence operations with surgical precision. "Enemy force assessment," Valentina reported during our final war council, her voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd just completed a flawless reconnaissance mission, the crisp sound of classified documents being shuffled, mixed with the aroma of victory-flavored coffee. Karen's expecting 50-plus allies, actual confirmed support, 11 neighbors down from 23 last week. Apparently federal criminal investigations have a cooling effect on community loyalty. The legal coordination was poetry in tactical motion. Federal postal inspectors were positioned for optimal dramatic timing. State prosecutors had synchronized arrest warrants with local law enforcement, and civil attorneys were locked and loaded with financial destruction paperwork that would make Karen's BMW payments look like pocket change. Jerome's contribution was approaching legendary status. "Mail tampering prosecution package is Hollywood ready," he announced, with the enthusiasm of someone who'd waited 3 decades to watch a serial mail criminal face federal justice. Postal Inspector Williams will attend as community liaison, which translates to federal agent waiting to slap handcuffs on mail criminals. The media situation had evolved beyond Karen's control faster than gossip in a church basement. Local news crews were planning coverage of what they'd been told was concerned citizen activism, but investigative reporters had discovered the federal embezzlement angle and were preparing to broadcast Karen's public destruction for primetime entertainment. "Spectacular irony," Valentina observed, reviewing media coordination with military satisfaction. Karen arranged television coverage to document her triumph over neighborhood insurgents. Instead, she's providing live broadcasts of her own criminal conviction. But the most delicious development was watching Karen's support network collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. The Ashford defection happened Wednesday afternoon with all the drama of a Cold War spy thriller. Jennifer Ashford appeared at Dorothy's door carrying a casserole and enough guilt to power a small confession booth. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, glancing around like she expected Karen's BMW to materialize from thin air, the sound of her voice shaking mixed with the distant hum of suburban anxiety. "Karen asked us to lie at the meeting. She wants us to claim we've seen you threatening neighbors, conducting illegal business activities, creating safety hazards." The smell of betrayal was sweeter than Dorothy's apple pie. "She's promised to support our pool permit application if we testify against you," Jennifer continued, wringing her hands with enough force to generate electricity. "But Tom and we can't do it. What she's asking isn't just wrong, it's perjury." The domino effect was magnificent. Within hours, 8 of Karen's remaining allies had quietly withdrawn support, leaving her with exactly 3 confirmed loyalists. The bitter divorced guy from Maple Street, who hated everyone equally, the conspiracy theorist who believed the Postal Service was monitoring his thoughts, and surprisingly, her own mother, who apparently hadn't heard about the federal charges yet. When your support network consists of paranoids and family members, Valentina observed with tactical satisfaction, you've already lost the psychological warfare campaign. Thursday evening was approaching like an avalanche of justice, and Karen had positioned herself directly in the impact zone. The taste of approaching victory mixed with the anticipation of watching a suburban tyrant finally discover that consequences were indeed a real thing. The community center meeting was going to be legendary. Thursday evening arrived with the electric tension of a medieval execution, and the Willowbrook Community Center had been transformed into an arena where suburban justice was about to be served with all the drama of a reality TV finale. The smell of industrial carpet cleaner mixed with nervous sweat and Karen's increasingly frantic perfume applications created an olfactory cocktail that screamed impending disaster. By 6:45 p.m., the community center buzzed with the energy of neighbors who'd gathered to witness either a lynching or a resurrection, and most seemed genuinely unsure which they were about to see. Karen held court at her head table like a deposed dictator making her final speech, surrounded by enough audiovisual equipment to shame a TED Talk, and precisely 3 loyal supporters who looked like they'd rather be getting root canal. Channel 6 News had positioned their cameras for optimal drama, with reporter Jessica Martinez looking like someone who'd stumbled onto a Pulitzer Prize story disguised as suburban melodrama. The warm glow of television lights, mixed with the fluorescent harshness of community center ambiance, created an atmosphere that felt both clinical and theatrical. "Ladies and gentlemen," Karen began, her voice carrying through the microphone with all the authority of someone who'd forgotten she was about to be arrested on federal charges, "we're here tonight to address a serious threat to our community values and property investments." The projection screen flickered to life, displaying what could only be described as a conspiracy theorist's fever dream. Photos of our house with red arrows pointing at alleged violations, screenshots of Marcus's truck with annotations about commercial vehicle infiltration, and a timeline suggesting our arrival had somehow triggered a neighborhood crime wave. "These people," Karen continued, gesturing toward us with the dramatic flair of a courtroom prosecutor who'd watched too many legal dramas, "represent everything that threatens the American suburban dream: military attitudes, disregard for community standards, and suspicious financial activities that compromise our security." The audience reaction was not what she'd expected. Instead of supportive murmurs, awkward silence filled the room like fog rolling in from a disaster zone. Dorothy sat in the front row knitting with the calm precision of someone who knew exactly how this story ended, while Jerome occupied a strategic position near the exit doors, though whether for quick escape or tactical positioning remained unclear. "Furthermore," Karen escalated, her voice gaining the manic energy of someone who'd lost touch with reality, "I have evidence of coordinated harassment against law-abiding citizens who've tried to maintain neighborhood standards." That's when Valentina stood up. The room went dead silent except for the low hum of fluorescent lighting and the distant sound of Channel 6's camera motor adjusting focus. Valentina's military bearing commanded attention with the kind of presence that made generals reconsider their career choices. "Mrs. Pemberton," she said, her voice carrying enough calm authority to stop traffic, "before you continue, I think the community deserves to see some actual evidence." Valentina approached the microphone with the confidence of someone who'd briefed colonels and lived to tell about it. "Over the past 3 months, we've documented systematic harassment, financial fraud, and federal crimes that paint a very different picture of neighborhood threats." The projection screen suddenly displayed bank statements, invoices, and financial records that made the audience gasp like they'd witnessed a magic trick. Numbers that didn't add up, payments to non-existent companies, and embezzlement patterns that would make forensic accountants weep with professional admiration. $47,000 in HOA funds diverted to fake companies, Valentina continued, her presentation flowing with military precision. $12,000 in personal property improvements charged to community accounts, and systematic harassment of any resident who questioned these irregularities. Karen's face cycled through more colors than a mood ring having a nervous breakdown. "Those records are private. You had no right to—" "Actually," interrupted a voice from the back of the room, Those records are evidence in a federal criminal investigation. Postal Inspector Williams stepped forward with the kind of authority that made everyone's posture improve automatically. Behind him, Detective Rodriguez from Columbus PD moved into position with the casual precision of someone who'd done this dance many times before. Karen Pemberton, Inspector Williams announced, his voice carrying enough federal authority to rearrange molecules. You're under arrest for mail tampering, embezzlement of community funds, harassment, and violation of federal privacy laws. The sound of handcuffs clicking echoed through the community center like the final note of a symphony. Karen's carefully orchestrated community meeting had transformed into her own public arrest, broadcast live on local television with better production values than most sitcoms. I demand to speak to my lawyer, Karen shrieked, her composed facade finally cracking like ice in spring thaw. This is a conspiracy, military persecution. These people are destroying our neighborhood. Ma'am, Detective Rodriguez said with the patience of someone who'd heard every excuse in the criminal handbook, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. As Karen was led away in handcuffs, the community center erupted in a mixture of applause, shocked whispers, and the satisfying sound of justice being served with full television coverage. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates looked like a completely different neighborhood, and not just because Karen's perfectly manicured corner lot now sported a cheerful "sold" sign that practically glowed with the satisfaction of cosmic justice. The smell of fresh paint and genuine community spirit had replaced the acrid stench of fear and harassment that had poisoned our streets for years. Karen's criminal conviction read like a prosecutor's greatest hits album: 18 months federal prison for mail tampering, 2 years state time for embezzlement, permanent loss of real estate license, and restitution payments that would keep her financially humble well into her retirement years. The judge's sentencing comments about abuse of authority and systematic intimidation had made local news highlights for weeks. But the real transformation was happening in our neighbors' daily lives. The new HOA leadership, elected in an emergency vote 3 weeks after Karen's arrest, operated with the radical transparency of people who'd learned exactly what happened when community finances went unmonitored. Dorothy had accepted the interim president position with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone who'd managed classroom chaos for 4 decades, while Jerome served as financial oversight coordinator, with the meticulous attention to detail that made postal workers legendary. First order of business, Dorothy announced at our inaugural post-Karen meeting, complete financial audit and new bylaws requiring quarterly transparency reports. Second order, community improvement projects that actually benefit residents instead of fake companies. The embezzled funds recovery had created an unexpected windfall for legitimate neighborhood improvements. The lawsuit against Karen and her shell company accomplices generated enough settlement money to fund new playground equipment, street lighting upgrades, and a community garden that transformed the unused lot behind the mailboxes into something resembling suburban paradise. Marcus's construction business had exploded with referrals from neighbors who'd witnessed his character during the Karen Wars. His workshop now operated at full capacity, and he'd hired 2 additional crew members to handle demand from communities across Columbus who'd heard about the contractor who'd helped take down a corrupt HOA president. Funny thing about reputation, he observed while installing new handrails for 3 elderly neighbors. Turns out standing up to bullies is better advertising than any Yellow Pages ad. Valentina had channeled her military logistics expertise into a consulting practice specializing in HOA financial audits and community organization reform. Her client list included neighborhoods from Toledo to Cincinnati, all seeking someone who could identify corruption patterns and implement transparency systems that prevented future Karen situations. The veteran housing program she'd established with her settlement money had already placed 4 military families in affordable housing throughout the Columbus area. The program's success had attracted national attention, with veteran organizations across Ohio requesting similar initiatives for their communities. Best revenge is living well and helping others do the same, she explained while reviewing applications from veteran families seeking housing assistance. Karen tried to destroy us for being different. Instead, she helped us build something that makes our community stronger. The annual Willowbrook Community Festival, our new tradition replacing Karen's rigid property value obsession, had become the neighborhood's crown jewel. Dorothy's organizational skills, Marcus's construction expertise, and Valentina's logistical genius combined to create an event that drew families from surrounding communities and generated enough revenue to fund ongoing improvements. Jerome's contribution to community healing came through his neighborhood newsletter, the Willowbrook Gazette, which documented positive developments with the same meticulous attention he'd once applied to Karen's federal crimes. His writing style, part postal worker precision, part community cheerleader, had become locally famous for celebrating ordinary neighbors doing extraordinary things. The Ashfords had quietly become model neighbors, their guilt over supporting Karen transformed into genuine community involvement. Jennifer now coordinated the neighborhood book club, while Tom managed the community garden with the enthusiasm of someone seeking redemption through tomato cultivation. Even our property values had improved, not through Karen's intimidation tactics, but through genuine community pride and investment in shared spaces that made Willowbrook Estates the kind of neighborhood people wanted to live in rather than escape from. The beautiful irony, Valentina reflected during our evening walk past Dorothy's perfectly maintained wheelchair ramp, is that Karen's worst nightmare came true. We really did change the neighborhood, just not the way she feared. The sound of children playing in the new playground mixed with the distant hum of evening traffic, and the satisfying knowledge that suburban justice, while sometimes delayed, could be absolutely spectacular when properly applied. So here's my challenge for you. Share your HOA nightmare story in the comments below, because bullies only win when good neighbors stay silent. And hit that subscribe button if you want to see more stories about ordinary people standing up to extraordinary jerks. Remember, document everything, stay legal, and never give up. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be driven away from the place you call home.